Okay, good evening. I am so sorry for the wait, Dr. Hargrove. It has been hard trying to get multiple devices, but now I'm here. But hello, my name is LaKayla Waters. I am doing a project on human trafficking and how it affects young girls and teens in Spanish-speaking countries. Okay. Okay. So, of course, I want to. Can you see? Okay. I want to start by defining on actually what human trafficking is in Spanish-speaking countries. So in Spain and most of part of the destinations for victims, mainly Eastern Europe, Asia, South America, but mainly in Spain. Human trafficking is defined as the action or practice of illegally transporting people from one country to another, typically for purpose for labor and sexual exploitation. And that definition was according to dictionary.com. So there are three different types of human trafficking. I did not know this. Is sex trafficking, forced labor, and bondage. And sex trafficking is, of course, like the main one that we all know about. The action or practice of illegal transporting people from one country to another area for the purpose of sexual exploitation. And of course, we know sexual exploitation is like to have sex with other men and basically get paid for it. Forced labor refers to situations in which a person are to work under the conditions that they are being violated, violence is being put upon them, or they're being intimidated, or they by more subtle means, which is accumulating debt, retention of identity papers, or threats of denunciation to immigration authorities. Period. Okay, and the last one is bondage, and that's the state of being a slave, which we don't really hear about, but that still is, of course, going on today. So I'm going to give you a little history on human trafficking. Human trafficking is a complex, deeply troubling issue that reflects on both nature and globalization in this evolution of human rights disclosure and disclosure. Like, throughout my research, I realized, which you will hear, that it has been a large increase in human trafficking, which is something that is very shocking to me. Over the last few years, like I said, and with the increasing rate, the international community and the particular certain national groups and governments have grown increasingly concerned with the phenomenon, common, often arguing that human trafficking is expanding still significantly, that it has come to represent one of the worrying human rights violations. And that is really insane out of all the things that we have going on with the police brutality, with the gun violence, that human trafficking is now becoming a big thing again. Okay, it started in the beginning of the European slave trade in Africa, which most of us know, with the Portuguese trading Africa to Portugal and using them as slaves. Britain joined the slave trade in Africa in 1952 during the 1600s of the countries became on this trend in the European slave trade. Okay, let's talk about young girls getting trafficked, which is not a good thing. Victims of trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation in Spain are girls usually young as 11 years old. The girls are often approached by persons who gain their interest in Eastern Europe, Latin America, and North America. But of course, we're just talking about Spain right now. Serious political, social, and economic crisis, civil war, religious or ethnic conflicts, prosecution and discrimination against minorities, high unemployed, and high crime rates put these children in a vulnerable situation. Trafficking describes a life. Of course, it's not a pleasant one. Sometimes the girl begin to get emotional when they when they come in contact. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not flicking the slides. Okay. Yeah, the girls are usually sometimes they get emotional with the men that traffic them. The young girls are usually taken to a large town. They are isolated, beaten, and subjected to severe physical and sexual abuse. Okay, so below shows a chart of all the different types of trafficking we have. It has your foreign trade, it has sex immigration, it has labor and then labor trafficking, then it has security trafficking. All of them, as you can see, throughout the years, this is year 2000 and it's going to 2010. So for a decade, you can see the number of cases surprisingly increased to almost passing 500 with labor trafficking. So labor trafficking seems to be the most in this chart. Okay, facts on the increase of human trafficking in Spanish-speaking countries. So, according to a global report, UNODC, trafficking increased up to 79%, and it is sexual exploitation. Of course, the victims are women and girls. That was the most cases. The second most common form of human trafficking is forced labor, which is, like I stated, which is about 18%, although this may be interpreted because forced labor is harder to detect and report more than trafficking for sexual exploitation, because most of these people have like storefronts. A lot of times it's easier to detect it in like massage parlors, or harder to detect it in maybe like a corner store. I know I watched a movie where these Africans, they had up a regular storefront, but when you went in the back, it was a whole bunch of girls living there in very not wonderful conditions. So it would be harder to detect that people, it's hard to detect that when people are putting up regular fronts, you know what I'm saying? So, which is crazy and sad for these girls. Okay. Okay, so this chart shows the increase in cases over the years. It also shows how it affects so many women, and not just young ages. It affects women over the ages of 30 as well. I saw it very surprising right here where it says most of the women that are 18 and older is 219, and the cases that are younger than 18, there are 116, which was surprising because I thought their target audience was more younger girls, but it does make sense of why they would want older girls, because older girls know what they're doing more. Yeah. So y'all just found this very interesting, and it says that about 14 boys have experienced sex trafficking, which was not as surprising because you don't really hear a lot of cases, but there are cases out there that exist. Okay, so this is just some more information that I found out about human trafficking. Victims of trafficking for the purposeful sexual exploitation in Spain are usually young girls. Like I said, the young girls are often approached by people who they gain to trust, which is something I didn't know. Traffickers describe their life, of course, is unpleasant, like I said. Yeah. Okay, and in conclusion, to conclude, what it means to be human trafficked. It is internationally trafficked. It is the unlawful movement of persons across national boundaries, whether coerced or usually and interperspectively of generation, of a gender or age, or reason for the transboundary movement. Overall, there are two main problems when it comes to human trafficking: significant definitional uncertainty regarding the crime, and a lack of quantitative and qualitative data on actual trafficking practices, which is crazy since the number is increasing. It means that these people, they are getting sneaky and they are finding better ways and sneakier ways to sex traffic these girls so they won't be found. So that means the police and the government have to get smarter as well. One thing I found surprising, like I said, is that they don't have enough cases, but there is a steady increase. And I also found very interesting that women over 30 are being trafficked more than teenage girls. So yes, thank you for listening to my presentation on human trafficking and how it affects young and teen girls in Spanish-speaking countries.